Who added them? Why? Well, they were originally added back in 1560, just to get my nerd part out of the way, give you a little history lesson. Yeah, there was a group of Protestant reformers back in 1560 who decided they wanted to go back to the original transcript, right back to the Hebrew, right back to the Greek, and translate a Bible as closely as they possibly could. But not everything in the Greek and Hebrew translates easily into the English, and back then it was Old English. So when they had to add something, they did not want to add or take away from the word of the Lord. So when they put something in to clarify so that you could kind of know what they're trying to tell you here, or trying to translate, they italicized it. And that's where our italics first came from. Then later on in the 17th century, when King James I came around, which is what we get our King James Bible from, he gave 54 translators a task of retranslating, because a lot of those Old English words change meaning quite a bit. So it really wasn't accurate or applicable anymore. Yep, exactly. So they kept with the same standard as the Geneva translators did. So that's why we have these italicized words. Whenever I see an italicized word, it's a flag for me. Hey, take a look at this. Why'd they put this in here? Was their interpretation of adding this in here correct? A lot of times it was, but sometimes you find that there might be a broader scope of what that word is actually trying to tell you. So that's where you really need to dig in. And if you guys learn anything from this digging that we're going to be doing in Proverbs 30, it's that there's a lot more perspective in these words than what we see in the English translation. Amen. If we go back and take a look at the Greek and Hebrew, we find that those words, yes, they might translate to something like pure. But pure in the English really means one thing: unblemished. Has nothing added to it. But when you look in the Greek or you look in the Hebrew, it opens up a whole slew of different things that this could possibly mean, especially in the figurative sense, which is what you see a lot, especially in this chapter, but in Proverbs in general, because they speak in dark sayings. They hide it in plain sight. So you got to dig into the meanings of these words a little bit to really open up the scope of what they're trying to tell you. All right, so now I got that little piece out of the way. I did my little cross-reference, see if the ISV or one of the other translations could break it down for me a little easier without having to do so much digging. And it said, God, I have asked you for two things. Don't refuse me before I die. Okay, so this is getting a little bit closer, but I still had to dig into it. So, two things I've required. Two translates great. Required is actually shalal. Yes, I guarantee you I'm butchering all these words. But I'll try to do my best. I'm more of a phonetic guy. I say things how they look. These are not like that at all. So, required actually is shalal, meaning to request or demand. I think the latter doesn't really apply here. I think it's more of a request, especially gauging by everything that he's said up until now. He's been very humble. Very, very humble. He's not demanding anything of God. But he knows that everything that he has is a gift from God. All the wisdom, all the understanding of the holy, the knowledge that he has gained is from the holy. So here, this reads more like two things I request of thee. The word things is added, so it's really two requests I have. All right, so, okay, now he's requesting the Lord. I found the word of to be quite interesting. So when we dig into of, there's another flag for me. Whenever you see two different words meaning one that are translated into one, that's another flag for me. What are the combination of these two Hebrew words translating into a single word in English? Usually when you put two words together, it means a whole heck of a lot more than a single one. So of is actually from 4480 and 854. 4480 is min, from or out of. So I'm requesting out of you something. And then this is actually a derivative of 4482, meaning to apportion, apart, hence a musical chord as parted into strings. Well, that brings a different connotation for this whole thing. Of is portioned out of in terms of a musical chord, a musical note. All right, let's break down the second part of this, see if it gives us a more full meaning. So 854 is ayeth, meaning nearness. Ayeth is from the root of 579 and 578. Yes, I'm going to dig down into like second and third levels a little bit, so just bear with me. This will all come together in a minute. It's from 579, ana, to approach, to meet in various senses, and another form of ana, which is 578, meaning to groan, lament, or mourn. So when you dig down and break these apart and see what they actually mean, because we have an abstract language we're dealing with here, it opens up a whole new realm of possibilities for what this means. So requiring of him, he's requesting of him, all these things. So we can start reading this a little bit differently. This verse can start to read, "Two requests I make from you, with groans and lamenting song. Deny me not before I die." So he's not requiring or demanding of anything, but when you put these together, he's requesting with groans and lamenting songs that he may not be denied this before he dies. And that term "before he dies" means while I'm still alive, while it's applicable, while these things are given to me, I can use them for your glory. Now, who could he have learned groans and lamenting songs from? Remember, this is, if this is Solomon here that we're talking about, who could he have learned these things from? How to do these things? David. Yeah, the great psalmist. Yep. So in Psalm 119:29, "Remove me from me the way of lying, and grant me thy law graciously." I think he learned some of this from his pops. And we can also see this later on, 2 Corinthians 5:1. "For we know now that if our earthly house of this tabernacle were dissolved, we have a building of God, a house not made of hands, eternal in heavens. For in this we groan, earnestly desiring to be clothed upon with our house, which is from heaven." All things groan out for the creation. All the creation groans out to see the fullness of the Lord. And this is what that is talking about here. So that gives it a whole different perspective for as we start to move down through this a little bit. Had to section off my notes a lot better because I got completely lost last time. So each verse has its own page. That way I can flip back and forth. And I got highlights on here and everything. I need it. All right, so let's move on to the next verse. Now that we have a little bit of perspective on this one. "Remove far from me vanity and lies. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with food convenient for me." There's a lot in this verse. So let's start digging into it a little bit. So on the surface, you can get a lot just from that. Remove from me vanity and lies. Absolutely. We don't want to be vain. We don't want to lie. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with food that is convenient for me. So we need to be satisfied with that which the Lord gives us and be happy there. But we can start digging into this, and I think we can get a little bit more out of it. Vanity is 7723, shav, which is evil, destructive, literally ruin, or morally, especially guile, sly, or cunning intelligence. So vanity isn't just, being really, really overly concerned with how we look, being vain, as we see it in the English, but it also applies to ruin, to your moral state, to how you treat people, which is what I get from guile or sly, cunning intelligence, because that's how you operate, how you talk to people, how you conduct business, all those things. So remove far from me vanity is saying, remove far from me all these things. Now, we move on to the next big word that I took a look at, lies. Vanity and lies. Now, lies is another combination one. It is 1697 dabar and 3577 kazab. Now, dabar is a word by implication of a matter, a spoken thing. Adverbially, a cause, act, advice, affair, answer, because of, book, or business. So it's not just a lie as telling a white lie, saying something when you really mean something else, but it ties back into vanity where it goes across all forms of communication. Written communication, the advice you give someone. You give someone the right advice, you kind of lead them this way so you can go around and get ahead. And it applies to everything, all forms of our communication with one another. Yeah, even including body language. It is being honest across all of our communications. That brings me back to Proverbs 11:1. It just rang a bell, especially that business part of it, because I'm a business major. A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. He already spoke about all these things, and this is just kind of condensing it all into a single word. All this stuff are principles that were already drawn out for us in Proverbs. And here we see it in a single sentence. But it also means a whole bunch of other things: chronicle, commandment, how we commune with one another, counsel, decrees, duties. Do everything as if you are doing them unto the Lord, right? Glory, do we give the glory to him? Harm, hurt, iniquity, judgment, language, everything. It encompasses the full range. So when we think of lies in here, we got to think about how we interact with everyone in every way. That just gives you a bigger perspective to look at it from. All right? So the first request reads, remove far from me physical ruin, moral deviousness, idolatry, and all manner of spoken, written, or acted deceit. It's how we could say that verse a little bit more fully. The second part is, give me neither poverty nor riches. Looking through the translation, poverty translates pretty well. It's to be poor. All right. Riches actually has a lot more around it. So riches comes from 6239 osher, meaning wealth, riches. Okay, we can see that. But it's derived from 6283 ashar, meaning to accumulate, chiefly and specifically to grow, to become, to make self rich and make. It comes from H1, father, king, H22, God, possessor, and 48, father of height, lofty. If we sink back in Selah, think about that one for a few minutes. What he's saying here is, let me build not my own ego up at the same time. It's not just about the riches, but it's about how we feel towards ourselves. It speaks of pride. And pride's a good thing. But pride, in the sense that it's speaking of here, is actually more of the word hubris. Hubris is the pride before the fall. So we want to avoid that. So give me neither poverty nor riches, worldly possessions, or excessive and self-absorbed pride. Feed me with food that is convenient for me is the next portion. So the word feed, yes, there's a lot to break down in this one. Later verses aren't so intricate, and so please bear with me. It is taraf, feed, to pluck off or pull to pieces, causatively to supply with food. Okay, so that fits pretty well. And then the next one is me with food, which is lechem from 3899, meaning food for man or beast, especially bread or grain. This is actually from 3899. Which again, I'm going down to second, third level. So this is from lakam, to feed, figuratively to consume, by implication to battle, devour, eat, fight, overcome, prevail, and make war. Well, that's a different meaning for the word food. Yeah. Why would he use a word that not only means sustenance, but means to fight, to overcome, to prevail, to make war with? Interesting. So now if we start taking this and we start expanding those words out and putting them back into this sentence here, it'll read a little bit differently. Give me neither poverty nor riches, worldly possessions or excessive and self-absorbed pride. Feed and supply me with food to consume, hardships to overcome, and fights to prevail in. So that gives us a much more in-depth view of what we're looking at here. Now we're going to go on to the last part, convenient for me. When is it convenient to get into a fight? Make war. So this word convenient is 2706, kohoke, meaning an enactment, hence an appointment of time, space, quantity, labor, or usage. So it's a commandment, a convenient, custom, decree, law, measure, ordinance, set time, or statute. The Lord has appointed you for a time such as this. So if we take a look at this again, give me neither poverty nor riches, worldly possessions, or excessive and self-absorbed pride. Feed and supply me with food to consume, hardships to overcome, and fights to prevail in, that you have appointed me to by your commandment and in your set time to fulfill the task that you deem necessary. So why do we find ourselves in hardships? So we can overcome them. Why do we find ourselves in a predicament, a fight, a war? So that we can win, so that we can prevail. We have been appointed, the Lord has appointed us in certain times for certain things. We just need to be willing and ready. Go ahead, Danny.
This will be short, but this is what I heard as you were talking. To the victor go the spoils. When I think of food, I think of spoils, because that's what happens to it if you don't eat it quick. I think if we didn't have some of the situations that we have in our life, we think we go through things. Well, not in this body. I think we're pretty well educated, but I imagine there's people out there that think that they're going through things needlessly. But if you don't have a battle going on in your life, you can't be a victor. Exactly. And if you're the victor, then you've gained something. Every time God allows us to go through a situation, we're the victors in that situation. We've gained something. We've gained maybe an increase in our faith, for one. Mm-hmm. We've gotten we now have, we do a lot of work for Smith & Wesson, so I'll say, a notch in your gun. Now you can go talk to somebody and say, this is what the Lord did for me. I went through this, and the Lord took me through, you know? So absolutely. That's what I got out of what you just said.
Absolutely. The Lord uses all those things to build us up. Without something to overcome, how can we be the overcomers that He has called us to be? We need to have something to overcome. We need to have something to challenge us. Without being challenged, we cannot grow. We have to be expanded. We have to have some pressure put on us to continue to expand and grow. And the more we learn, the more we're able to do for the Lord. I mean, it just brings me back to Paul. Wow, he had some hardships, huh? Got thrown in jail. He got all sorts of stuff. He got stoned, and he was constantly crying out, God, why me? Why? No, actually, no, he wasn't. He was thrown in prison, and what did he do? He sang. He praised out. The ground shook and the doors opened. But did he say, I'm out, and run for the door? No. He stayed there. Why? Because he was listening. He knew there was something else, so he stayed. And then that guard, the jailer, came back, and we all know the story that goes on from there. There's so much in this verse that applies to a lot that we see the rest of the Bible. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, because you said something, and if we could ever realize, even when we're going through situations, because sometimes when we go through a situation, we lose sight.
Yes, very true.
You do. You lose sight of who you are in Christ. You lose sight of the purpose that God has filled you with.
Yep.
You lose sight of who is within you,
Absolutely.
who said they'll never leave you or forsake you. So if you're going through something, he's not going to hop board and take off. And you have to, there's one important thing you said, and we need to be able to do this. We need to know his voice. We need to hear that voice, because we know there's many, many voices in the land. But we have to be so in tune to know that voice, because we're going to, I can't help it. You look around this world, you know, and we went to a wedding yesterday, and we said there was hardly any young people there. We both were talking about this, and it kind of is really heartbreaking, because if we don't begin to rise up and realize who we are and begin to pray and to know that we were appointed for this time in this place for such a time as this, God's called us, he's equipped us, we know all these things, but if we don't begin to stand up and rise up and begin to use it, we're going to lose a generation. Not only a generation, but generations.
Yep.
This isn't about us.
Yep.
And I know I'm getting a little off, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that actually fits in
Okay,
later on, so
because
you're good.
this is about generations to come. Our seed and what God has promised us and everything. We have to stop thinking about woe is me, or why am I in this situation, or you know, what did I ever do to get here? Oh, be thankful you're there.
Yep.
But we don't. Well, come on, let's not kid ourselves. Sometimes it's hard, you know, and we, instead of having a pity party, we have to begin, we have to take our boots by the straps and say, I need to rise up in this thing. Do I do that all the time? No. We're still in a learning process, but we need to become mature. We're going to be accountable for all the things that we know. We're not just a church that's called to sit in the pew and to just, oh, okay, let somebody else do it.
Yep.
Because God's put a whole lot in us. He's put himself in us.
Absolutely.
He's equipped us. He's given us the power. He's given us the authority. Oh my God, we know all these things. We know all these things. Knowing a thing is not possessing a thing.
Yep. It's got to be in here.
So
Not
we
just
need
here.
to begin as a body and to encourage and uplift one another and say we can do this, because we can do this.
Amen.
We have everything in us.
Yep.
And you know what? We can't run from problems and run from situations. We're going to have to face them head on
Yep. You're absolutely
and know
right.
who we are.
And everything you said fits into pieces that I have later on. It all that fits right into stuff that I have coming up in the next verses, and all this chapter speaks to all those things, which is great.
I took the mic because I just want you up here longer.
Thank you.
Two things that come to me is in this conversation. First one was, Jesus said, in this world, you're going to have tribulations or trials. So he said that. What makes us think life is going to be a water slide all our life?
It's not a big amusement park.
Okay? And the other thing, I'm a firm believer, I always have been, and I've said it lots of times, that God's desire for us is to be healthy, wealthy, and wise. But I got a question. Do we have the character to possess it?
What is convenient
And
for me?
here's the whole deal. What you're covering with is this. A problem comes our way, and we get our goal on getting the problem fixed. You know what God's goal is? How
Build
you
us.
handle it.
Yeah, to build us through it.
It's all about changing your character.
Yep. That's exactly what
God
he means
can
by it.
heal,
Yep.
deliver, do that with a blink of his eye, with a look. But if it continues, what is God doing? You got to understand He's working on your character for something greater later on.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about. It's about your character. I think one of the best things we do is do a nice Greek word study on the word character.
Yeah.
Because that's what God is after. That's what this is all about.
Yes. Yep. It's all building
whole
character.
We're going to face trouble. You might as well make up your mind. It's in the world. But how's God going to develop you in the midst of it?
Yeah.
Because we gripe and complain over some of the dumbest things.
Traffic. It's the
Yeah,
worst one for
right.
me. All that reminds me of Job. Did he find himself deserving of all the affliction that he went through? He's like, why? Yeah. There's greater purpose. And the Lord told him as much out of the whirlwind, as we discussed a little bit last time. So to bring all that together, convenient for me, all these things, the fights, the trials, the tribulations, our possessions, everything, give me that which is convenient for me. Give me that which you have appointed to me. Give me that which you think is a good measure, what you think is a good portion. And we need to be able to accept it. Okay. All right, let's move on to 39. So this builds off the last one. So may I be content with all these things and have them portioned to me as you would see fit, lest I be full and deny thee and say, who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and take the name of my God in vain. Now, once again, like I was saying before, there's a lot of italicizing here. The is in vain. Okay, so there's flags all over the place in here. I just started digging. So, excuse me, full, 7646, Saba, meaning fill to satisfaction, literally or figuratively. Have enough, fill, full, self, to be full of. Okay, so lest I be full, satisfied, full in both physical, spiritual, prideful sense, all those things. Lest I be full and deny thee. Deny is 3584, kakash, meaning to be untrue in word, to lie, feign, or disown, to disappoint, deceive, deny, fail, deal falsely, to be found liars. So we're really not denying him in this. We're lying, outright lying, saying, lest I be full and lie, is what this reads. Lest I be full with possessions and hubris and lie about the true source of my success. The next part of the phrase, and say, who is the Lord? Well, Lord is 3068. I think we've heard it before, Jehovah, meaning self-existent or eternal. So let's pull all this together. It's going to be a little wordy. Give me neither poverty nor riches, worldly possessions, or excessive and self-absorbed pride. Feed and supply me with food to consume, hardships to overcome, and fights to prevail in that you have appointed me to, by your commandment in your set time to fulfill the tasks you deem necessary, lest I be full with possessions and hubris and lie about the true source of my success and say, who is Jehovah, the self-existent and eternal God? That's a mouthful. We all know who the source of our success is, and he said it here in previous verses that we've looked at before. Or lest I be poor and steal and take the name of the Lord in vain. Second half of this. Poor. So poor is 34:23, yarash, meaning, to occupy by driving out previous tenants and possessing in their place. Interesting word for poor. By implication, to seize, rob, also to expel, to impoverish, to ruin. So, lest I be poor, driven out, have my temple occupied. This brings to mind the teaching Jesus gave on what happens when spirits are driven out. In Luke 11:24, when the unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he walketh through dry places, seeking rest and finding none. He saith, I will return unto my house whence I came out. And when he cometh, he findeth it swept and garnished. Then goeth he and taketh to him 7 other spirits more wicked than himself, and they enter in and dwell there. And the last state of that man is worse than the first. Lest I be poor. Lest I be poor. So in this, putting these two together, that word poor, driven out, kind of you deny the Spirit of the Lord. And when you don't have the Spirit of the Lord inside you, there's an opening there. And then the spirits that you avoid. And whenever there's a void, something wants to fill it. And if you don't fill it with the Spirit of the Lord, what will possess that void in you? Something will. Something will. And is it what you want there? If it's not Spirit of the Lord, then no. That's a pretty easy one to answer. So, lest I be poor and steal. Steal is 1589, ganab, meaning to thieve. Goes on to the second page. Literally, figuratively, by implication, to deceive. So let's see what this starts saying. Lest I be poor, physically impoverished, and spiritually ruined, deceiving and stealing. Second part of this is, and take the name of God in vain. I'm going to dig into these ones a little bit more because I think there's some good little nuggets in here. So take is from 8610, meaning, to manipulate. That is, seize, chiefly to capture, wield, overlay, figuratively, to use unwarrantably, without sanction or authorization is what unwarrantably means. So, take the name of God in vain, which if you put this in here, it's to manipulate by using the name of God. To seize, to capture, to unwarrantably use the name of the Lord. And if we use this and apply it more to the church, are there preachers, teachers, people out there that will use the name of the Lord to get, to gain, to enrich themselves, not the people? It's done every day, all over the world. So let's break this down a little bit more. Name is 8034, meaning an appellation, which is actually a name or title, as a mark or memorial of individuality, by implication, honor, authority, or character. Let's go into the next one a little bit. God is 430, Elohim, meaning God in the ordinary sense, but specifically used of the supreme God. So let's put this all together now. This is going to be extra wordy. Give me neither poverty nor riches, worldly possessions, or excessive and self-absorbed pride. Feed and supply me with food to consume, hardships to overcome, and fights to prevail in, that you have appointed to me by your commandment and in your set time to fulfill the task you deem necessary, lest I be filled with possessions and hubris and lie about the true source of my success and say, who is Jehovah, the self-existent and eternal God? Or lest I be poor, physically impoverished and spiritually ruined, deceiving and stealing by manipulating and wielding unwarrantably the name and honor and authority of Elohim, the supreme God, for my own gain. That's a real mouthful. Whew. So that sentence there blew up into something when we actually, in engineering, is ballooning out. We take these things and you break them down into their constituent parts. Can we read the whole thing?
Yep, last part.
The last part? Lest I be filled with the whole thing? Okay, read the whole thing over. Give me neither possessions nor riches, worldly possessions, or excessive and self-absorbed pride, hubris. Feed and supply me with food to consume, hardships to overcome, and fights to prevail in, that you have appointed to me by your commandment and in your set time to fulfill the tasks that you deem necessary, which builds us. Lest I be filled with possessions and hubris and lie about the true source of my success and say, who is Jehovah, the self-existent and eternal God? Or lest I be poor, physically impoverished and spiritually ruined, deceiving and stealing by manipulation and wielding unwarrantably the name, honor, and authority of Elohim, the supreme God, for my own gain. Mouthful indeed. So we need to be content in the tasks, in the place, in the hardships, trials, the tribulations, all the things that this verse pulls out to us. We need to be content in those and use those to continue to build ourselves, or let the Lord build us through them more appropriately, so that we don't fall into the trap that is stipulated later on in this verse, being poor, destitute, not only physically but spiritually, or lest we gain too much pride. We have all these things. Look what I have built. Look at the castle on the sand that I have built for myself. It'll all come down. Who is God? I didn't need him to build this stuff. Look at it. Look at all I have made with my hands. It's all on sand. Unless you put it on the rock. All right, I think we went through that one well enough. This one should be pretty quick. Should be able to get it in for the bell. 30:10. This one seems kind of just thrown in there, kind of random, but it's not. It's quite applicable. Accuse not a servant unto his master, lest he curse thee and thou be found guilty. The only word in here that I really had to break down a little bit to see what it was servant, which is abed from 56:47. In bondage, a bondsman or a bondservant. Hello, bondservants. For it is written in Romans 14:11, as I live, saith the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall confess to God. So then every one of us shall give an account of himself to God. Let us not therefore judge one another any more, but judge this rather, that no man put a stumbling block or an occasion to fall in his brother's way. We're all servants of the Lord. Why would we go to our master saying things, stirring up trouble, throwing bricks in the way for people to trip on? We've been warned about that by Paul. Let us therefore judge one another, not judge one another anymore, but judge this rather, that no man put a stumbling block or occasion to fall in his brother's path. That's what I believe this is saying, and it applies to the previous verses because we're supposed to be content in that which the Lord gives us. Yeah. So if we start speaking in other people's ears,
I don't know why you're dealing with this. This shouldn't be happening. This shouldn't be happening. Instead of looking for the Spirit in what is the Spirit saying to us here? Encouraging one another. Yes, we're going through something, but what is the Lord saying to us here? I have a different perspective than you on it. Let's talk about this. Let's figure it out. Let's put the Spirit that binds all of us together into this, and let's figure this out. What is the Lord teaching us here?
My ways are not your ways.
My ways are not your ways. We should be a complete encouragement in terms of this instead of a stumbling block. And that's it for today. Tomorrow or next week we'll pick it up with 11.